between Crewe and Wigan North Western, and issues impact Trans-Pennine Express between Huddersfield and Manchester Victoria. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
It's the final week to see how you can become our biggest cash prize winner to date, as there's a simply stunning £85,000 in tax-free cash to be won. Go on that dream holiday, buy that brand new car, or just relax in the knowledge that the rest of the year could be on us. But you have to hurry, as lines close on Friday the 30th of January. For another chance to win £85,000 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB18 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 30th of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Bold.
They are under no illusion.
Ray.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get this on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dewbs & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Miriam Cates and you're watching GB News. Coming up in the next hour on Dewbs & Co. Sir Keir Starmer has landed in Beijing. He's the first British Prime Minister to pay a visit to China since Theresa May in 2018. The government says that engaging with China is essential for UK prosperity. But are we becoming far too dependent on Xi Jinping's communist superpower? And the Conservative Party leader, Kemi Badenoch, says she's leading a party of serious people, not drama queens, as she hits out at both Labour and Reform. Mrs Badenoch accused MPs who've recently defected to Reform of having a tantrum dressed up as politics. But when it comes to delivering political psychodrama, can anyone beat the Tories' record? And after weeks of campaigning against planned rises to business rates, Britain's pubs have been granted a temporary reprieve. Yesterday, the government announced a 15% discount for pubs and music venues next year, followed by a 2-year rent freeze. But publicans warn it's not enough to stave off thousands more closures. So is it too late to save your local boozer? And joining me for the debate tonight, I've got my panel, the Conservative peer and former MEP, Baroness Jacqueline Foster, and former Labour Minister Bill Rammell. But first, the latest news headlines with Sam.
Miriam, thank you, and a very good evening to you. The top story tonight at 6, President Donald Trump has issued one of his starkest warnings yet to Iran, saying time is running out for Tehran to agree to a nuclear deal. In a post on his Truth Social account earlier, Mr. Trump said a massive armada of US ships is moving towards the region, describing the fleet as ready with speed and violence if necessary. He warned Iran to come to the table and accept a deal that guarantees it will not develop nuclear weapons, suggesting the next US move could be far more severe if talks fail. Iran, though, has pushed back, rejecting negotiations under military threat and warning any attack would be treated as an all-out war. Also tonight, Sir Keir Starmer says the UK is making history as he begins the first visit to China by a British Prime Minister in 8 years. Addressing a delegation of more than 50 British business and cultural leaders, the Prime Minister said that trip marks a reset in relations, moving away from what he called years of drifting between a golden age and now an ice age with Beijing. Mr Starmer says the government wants a more consistent, hard-headed approach, engaging for Britain's national interest while still raising areas of disagreement. He's due to meet President Xi Jinping tomorrow, with trade, investment and long-term economic ties high on the agenda, alongside security and human rights. Back here at home, a heated clash at Prime Minister's questions this afternoon as Labour came under pressure over who's really benefiting from its pub tax break. The row follows the government's decision to give pubs and live music venues 15% off business rates. Shadow Business Secretary Andrew Griffith challenged David Lammy, claiming more than 90% of hospitality businesses still get nothing from the government's plan.
If the party opposite knew anything about business, they would know this is too little too late. Our high streets, their high streets, are bleeding out.
Well, David Lammy, as custom, hit back, pointing to the Conservatives' record and insisting Labour is acting to keep pubs and music venues alive after years of closure.
All of us want to see our pubs in good health and to support hospitality. That's why the Chancellor announced a £4 billion package of support. I must say that contrasts with the party opposite, who of course saw 7,000 pubs close under their watch.
And staying with politics, Kemi Badenoch has launched a fresh attack on both Labour and Reform UK today, accusing them of being, in her words, drama queens. In a speech to party members, the Conservative leader said she's focused on rebuilding, not blowing up the Tory party, and took a direct swipe at Nigel Farage along the way. She told supporters she wasn't elected to dismantle the Conservatives just so Nigel Farage can finally have a go, and insisted voters want seriousness, not political spectacle.
What we need are people who are going to help get Britain working again. And that means we have to be a truly Conservative party. So I won't apologise to those walking away because they don't like the new direction. We only want Conservatives. But to those who are defecting, who don't actually disagree with our policies, I will say, I'm sorry you didn't win the leadership contest. I'm sorry you didn't get a job in the shadow cabinet. I'm sorry you didn't get into the Lords, but you are not offering a plan to fix this country. This is a tantrum dressed up as politics.
A former frontman for Spandau Ballet is facing a possible jail sentence after being found guilty today of rape and attempted rape. Ross Davidson, also known by the stage name Ross Wilde, was convicted of raping a woman in London in 2015 and attempting to rape and sexually assault another woman in Thailand in 2019. Jurors heard the singer believed he was entitled to, quote, sex on demand. Davidson denied the charges, insisting the encounters were consensual, but will now return to court next month, where a sentencing date is expected to be set. And history has been made at the Church of England. Today, Dame Sarah Mullally has been formally sworn in as the Archbishop of Canterbury. She is the first woman to lead the church in its 500-year history, confirmed at a ceremony at St Paul's Cathedral earlier, after nearly a decade as Bishop of London, and a career that began far from the pulpit as England's chief nursing officer. She takes over, of course, from Justin Welby, who stepped down following serious failings over safeguarding. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back in around an hour's time. Now, though, it's over to... No, it's not Dewbs, it's Miriam.
Thank you, Sam. Well, welcome back to Dewbs & Co. with me, Miriam Cates. And joining me until 7 o'clock, I've got my panel, the Conservative peer and former MEP, Baroness Jackie Foster, and former Labour Minister Bill Rammell. And please do remember, get your views and opinions in, gbnews.com/your say. We'll be reading them out throughout the programme. Well, let's start with our top story tonight. Sir Keir Starmer has arrived in Beijing, ready to talk business with the Chinese President Xi Jinping tomorrow. However, the trip has been widely criticised. Some people are wary over whether China can be trusted amidst surveillance concerns and allegations of human rights abuses. Well, further alarm bells have rung as it was revealed that China is sending tools to help Russia build a missile that President Putin is using to threaten the West. Well, if Britain becomes dependent on Chinese clean tech, Beijing could also have complete power over our economy. So is Starmer walking straight into a trap? Bill, you can kind of understand the logic, why we must engage with China, but we should be a lot more wary than this government is being.
I think the government is being wary. I mean, look, you know, I know firsthand about why you need to be wary in China. I was a Foreign Office Minister for 4 years. China was part of my patch. I remember when they stole my briefing documents on the way into a meeting with the Chinese Foreign Minister. So you have to go into it clear-sighted. But there are 370,000 British jobs dependent on trade with China. It's about £98 billion a year. UK universities recruit significantly from China. That's worth billions of pounds to UK universities, but also brings us soft power. And so we'd be crazy for the second biggest economy in the world, which is going to double or triple over the next 25 years, not to engage. But you've got to be hard-headed. You have to mitigate the risks. You have to challenge them on human rights. You have to challenge them on Taiwan. And, you know, 75% of our semiconductors are produced within Taiwan. If China kicks off there are real problems. But I think you can do that.
But you talk about trade with China, but it's a very one-way street, isn't it? We buy billions and billions of pounds from them, but only 3.5% of our exports go to China, less than to Ireland, which has a tiny population. They are using us. We're not getting the same deal back.
OK, so they're the second biggest importer to the UK and the sixth biggest export market for us. There is an imbalance, and in part that's what the trade delegation, and Keir Starmer's taken about 50 or 60 businesses with him, that's part of the engagement to actually redress that balance.
But Jack, isn't it very naive to think that Starmer, or frankly anybody, can change this trade imbalance? The Chinese strategy is to reduce the amount of goods that they buy from other countries and increase the amount of sales.
Well, you're not wrong, actually. No, I think none of us are naive enough to think that we have traded and need to trade with countries and we're not great fans of their regimes. I think China is another step above that, frankly. Was it necessary that Keir Starmer needed to go? No, not really. I think the point that you have raised, I think there's two sides to this coin. If we look at the trade side, you're quite right. I think there's something like a £50 billion trade deficit with us and China. That's the first thing. I also do not believe that if Keir Starmer didn't go to China, that China would sort of pull the plug on exporting everything it does to this country. That would never, never happen. So I think it's a sort of a bit of a false narrative to sort of say, you know, if we don't go, we all fall out with each other. So you're absolutely quite right to raise that. I think we then move on to, I would say, national security. Yes, of course, we have to talk to neighbours and people that we trade with, but it's not just about human rights in China and no free speech and how they treat the Uyghurs. It's also that China, and I said it, I put it on my Twitter account, actually, and I said it in the House yesterday in the Chamber, they're up to their neck in the relationship with Russia when you look at what's happening with Ukraine. And we see that also in terms of the £10 billion or more that they're actually putting in to assist Russia to have this nuclear-capable hypersonic missile. So that's just one thing. In addition to that, you've got to look at the support of China to the Islamic Republic of Iran. They're always very quiet the way they do things, but it wasn't just Iran. Iran, of course, is the spider with the web that transcends the Middle East and has caused all of these massive problems. So not only that, you then have also, Bill mentioned very importantly, Taiwan. Taiwan, they are very, very, very nervous indeed.
Indeed, but
so
surely...
I think, as I said, there's two strands to it. There's the trade side. Did he have to go? And I don't think it doesn't matter what protestations we make. The China regime is not going to listen.
Well, that's it, isn't it? Isn't this kind of extended naivety? In 2001, when the West let China into the World Trade Organization, the idea was that if they became wealthy, if they became capitalist, they'd suddenly become a liberal democracy. Well, they've played us for fools because they've become capitalist and they've made a lot of money. But the communist regime has become more and more authoritarian.
Well, if you look at the history, China was liberalising until Xi Jinping Jinping, and I fully acknowledge he's moved the country in a much more regressive direction. But look, it's a reality. It's there. It's the second biggest economy in the world. You've got to try to engage with it. And look, it's not just the UK. Every European country, Canada, Australia, Japan, others, go to China to seek to engage with them. Now, are they all wrong? And you know, Kemi Badenoch's right that we shouldn't be engaging. And the Tory party, forgive me, have been completely inconsistent on this. Forgive me. You know, go back to David Cameron and George Osborne. You know, the massive engagement with China, frankly, with too little caution. And now the Tories have gone completely the other end of the spectrum, suggesting that we really shouldn't engage. It's not credible.
Because as we said, there's a change in leadership and there was a change of direction. We remember Tiananmen Square and all of these sorts of things. And we thought at the time, I think...
Well,
that
was a long time ago.
It certainly was, but I think also the Labour Party also believed that there was a certain change. Now, we know that that is actually not the case. So notwithstanding that, I mean, we've had this discussion this week on... We gave them permission to build a new embassy. And that sounds fine. And the next thing we find that they want additional space in there to be able to have more and more people in there and have 42 flats. And then you find that they're near the sort of the cables in the City of London. And it's to what extent you actually bend over backwards.
But isn't it too late? Isn't it too late? We are completely beholden to them. I mean, they're a major investor in Hinkley Point C, our new nuclear power. We buy 68% of solar panels from them, 30% of electric cars. It's too late. We're completely economically dependent.
Well, actually, and we do need to cooperate in terms of energy, but I do have concerns about the degree of dependence on solar and wind.
They have created a situation where we can only reach net zero if we get all of our technology from them. Surely that in itself is an argument against net zero.
And we need to manage that carefully, and I think we should...
need to pull out of it. We don't need to manage it.
No, we should ensure that it doesn't go up above a certain threshold, so that in terms of maintenance, the Chinese could cut us off. But, you know...
This is where markets come in. And then, obviously, we know they're very good at flooding markets. I mean, you know, these are really
the Chinese are incredibly bright
of course
and
they
innovative.
Are. You know, maybe they're getting back to us from the Opium Wars, saying it's our turn now.
Well, that's quite possible.
But you know, I mean, I think it does have to be taken very seriously. Anyway, my point is, we're not naive. We don't sit here being naive, thinking we don't talk to people that we don't like particularly. But I think that this is a step too far, and I think whatever they say in reassurance,
Jacqueline, if there was a Conservative Prime Minister now,
falling on deaf ears.
If there was a Conservative Prime Minister now, do you really think they wouldn't be going to China? I mean, Theresa May went to China. You know, it's just not credible to suggest that you don't need the leader to go and engage. Yes, you push them very strongly, and yes, we need to manage the risks, but we should be engaging because it's in our national interest.
Well, of course, they've got embassies, they are engaging, but you mentioned something that's very interesting about the universities. And what we do know, and where there is a massive concern, when you're looking at the advancement of technology and research and stuff, we are world leaders. We know we are in many, many areas in this country. And the Chinese are very good at copying. They are brilliant at copying. And the influence, actually, with the amount of money that's going into a lot of the universities is also, I think, it's a great concern as well.
Well, look,
that then starts to manipulate in terms of curriculum and people who are there, and it's long-standing. I mean, we're talking about the future impact.
Well, look, I'm a former university vice-chancellor, and I think, you know, Chinese students coming here is massively to our advantage. And yes, they bring significant income. They also give us soft power in the future, in that we have a relationship with these people, a lot of whom are going to be in positions of influence. There have been a few isolated examples where universities have responded to Chinese pressure in a wholly inappropriate way, and that needs to be stamped out.
It's escalated hugely.
Do you think part of the problem here has actually been from the Conservative side, that Conservatives have pushed this idea of free market economy so passionately, so ideologically, that we have failed to put in any kind of barriers to trade with China, whereas other countries have rules about what can and cannot be bought by foreign entities, for example, whereas we have opened up, we've sold off our assets, not just the Chinese, to Americans and other people as well, and we are now in a far worse position than France, Germany, Italy when it comes to foreign ownership of our countries. And free market ideology, the failure to recognise that actually sometimes it's better to prefer your own, has driven a lot of that.
No, I don't agree with that. I mean, I am a free marketeer and I am we are a trading
But
nation.
isn't free trade the same as free movement of people?
Yeah,
it's fine up until a point, but then you've just sold your soul.
Yeah, but as we say, hindsight's always easy, isn't it? It wasn't just... we didn't all of a sudden start trading with China because David Cameron was the Prime Minister.
We started trading with China in 2001 when we let them in the World Trade Organization, and that was a mistake.
Indeed, but we were also trading with them before then. I mean...
Yes, but not freely, and that's the point.
Well, we may not...
We had tariffs, restrictions,
we may
rules.
not have been, but then it is up to governments and subsequent governments to turn around and look at the balance. I think one of the biggest issues and a wake-up call was COVID. And I stood up and said a few years ago, if we are going to actually outsource products that actually come within our national security, in this case there was this virus that appeared, the people that are manufacturing something like that, our trading partner, clearly you have to be, without doubt, has to be a friend. Because what we then realised was, and it didn't matter which government it was, it happened, there we were, and we were up to here. And, of course, we were very reliant on China to produce some of the protective clothing and the protective things that we needed when we had that COVID. And, of course, they were behind it all because they'd had a cover-up for several months when the virus itself had actually been created in a lab.
Before we get into
story.
It is another story, and we probably don't have time for it today.
We should have learned the lesson.
Thank you both. Don't go away, because coming up, Kemi Badenoch has hit out at Labour Party and Reform UK, branding defectors drama queens having tantrums. But are the Tories really in any position to lecture people on political chaos? Stay with us.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dewbs, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, DC.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Miriam Cates, and keeping me company until 7 o'clock, I've got Jacqueline Foster and Bill Rammell. And let's have a look at what you've been saying on gbnews.com/your say. Lots of comments about the Prime Minister's visits to China. Athena says Starmer is only in China for his own interests. Steve says Starmer's gone begging for Chinese money. He'll surrender whatever it takes. Diana says Starmer has already made history as being the worst PM in living memory. Well, thankfully for Xi Jinping, he doesn't have to worry about things like elections, so maybe he'll give Starmer some encouragement. Well, moving on to our second story of the evening, Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative leader, has slammed both Labour and Reform UK's psychodrama in a speech today, saying that neither parties are serious and the public are thoroughly fed up with this style of politics.
At a time when we were trying to stop Labour surrendering British territory in the Chagos Islands and fighting to save Britain's hospitality industry, what were other parties doing? Psychodrama. The Labour Party scheming to bring in a new contender to challenge the Prime Minister. Reform UK distracting everyone from Labour's mess, dressing up a defection rally as a veterans event. Everyone is fed up with this style of politics. We need to get serious.
But we're going to be debating, has the leader of the Conservative Party not also contributed to this so-called psychodrama? Let's remind ourselves of her response to the budget back in November.
We've had is wallowing in self-pity and whining about misogyny and mansplaining. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, let me explain to the Chancellor, woman to woman. People out there aren't complaining because she's female, they're complaining because she is utterly incompetent. What did the Chancellor think would happen when she went on breakfast telly to do an emergency public service announcement? I interrupt your Cheerios to bring you this frightening message about income tax.
Well, Jackie, I mean, is this psychodrama or is this just politics?
Well, that wasn't psychodrama. That was one of the best. I think that was one of the best speeches in terms of taking on a Chancellor, and particularly in this case, one of the worst budgets I think we've ever had.
But it was personal attack.
It doesn't. I mean, that's what happens in the House of Commons.
Exactly, but that's what Kemi Badenoch is criticising from some of the people in other parties.
No, what we're talking about now is something completely different. And we know, and we fully admit, we have had people I know and people you know that you worked with who have decided to change parties. That's entirely up to them. And I have no particular issue if somebody decides that the party is not for them. But it's also the way people do it too. And where she is right is that we have had, we've got massive stuff going on at the moment. This Labour government are bringing forward bills that are, whether it's for the hospitality industry, whether it's crime and policing, whether it was the farmers. I mean, we have had some of the worst legislation put forward in terms of damaging this economy over the last 18 months. And our job as the official opposition is to tackle that. And that's what we're trying to do. But in the meantime, we then had, and I know Rob well, and I know Suella well, and the fact they decided that they wanted to leave. Now, what makes me then question, and you were around at the time, you know, both of them stood for the leadership of the Conservative Party not that long ago. So they obviously believed that they could be in a position where they could start moving the party back to where it needed to be. I'm the first one to admit, as a sort of Thatcherite on the right, that it had certainly drifted too far on the left for me. But we carried on trying to put pressure on. So both of them did that. And then, you know, some months later or a year later, we're then in a position where if somebody's going to go, but they then go and sort of get on the television and do their speeches and pronouncements and then start having a crack at everybody in the most disparaging way to, I think, many of their colleagues who are very decent and good colleagues who know how difficult it is in politics at the end of the day.
I will bring Bill in a minute because the Labour Party has had its own psychodrama in the last couple of weeks. But
well, we've got Andy Burnham, haven't we?
Indeed, we will get onto that. But I mean, the way you characterise it is a fair way, Jackie, and this is about personalities. But could there be something much deeper going on here, which is that people on the right are recognising that Britain is in great difficulty, that it's going to take an enormous amount of change to turn it around. And actually, even though there's a lot of praise for Kemi Badenoch out there, even from the people who've defected, the Conservative Party can no longer be trusted to do that. And really, there's only room for one party on the right. And this is just part of that drift, part of that realignment, and it's inevitable.
I mean, I think where you're right is we've always known, I mean, both of us, whether it's Labour or the Conservatives, it's been easy actually also for the public to sort of differentiate, well, they're there and they're there. We as the Conservative Party, that people would say, well, it's the economy, obviously the rural economy as well, along with policing and defence and all of those sort of hard things. We were always lucky if we could sort of neutralise the argument over the NHS, albeit we'd been in government far longer than any Labour Party post-war and actually tried to make sure that the NHS actually was funded properly because we ran a good economy. So, no, you're not wrong there, but by the same token, you know, I remember, I'm old enough to remember 1997 and we were absolutely wiped out then. People thought in the Labour Party that they'd never come back after the horrendous hard left leadership and what happened in the 70s, you know. Yeah. But traditional parties like ours, and we are the oldest political party in the world, we feel as though we have a responsibility. We've been in government, been around in this form for 200 years. And we do believe that we can actually rectify this to bring us back to where we should have been. We accept, a lot of us, it did drift. There were challenges with COVID and Ukraine and all of those things, but that's not good enough. And she's the right person at the right time when we've started to actually get the meat on the bone for the policies.
Bill, it is Kemi Badenoch making this accusation today, but one of the principal charges that the Labour opposition made over the last 14 years was that the Tory party was one endless psychodrama.
And it was true.
And but it's kind of carried on to the Labour government now.
Look, Kemi Badenoch's clearly got a very underdeveloped sense of irony. You know, 5 Prime Ministers in 14 years, serial resignations from the government, Liz Truss crashing the economy. We're really not going to take lectures about psychodramas. And I think part of this is trying to hide the parlous state of the Conservative Party. You know, 2024 was the worst election result for the Conservative Party in its history. They're now polling about 5% below what they did at that general election. And virtually every week there's a defection.
The Labour Party has fallen far further in the polls since the election.
Yeah, look, I'm not comfortable with where the Labour Party is at, but I'd say what history tells me, that if the Labour Party gets its act together and recovers to the low 30% of the poll, you know, go back to the 1980s when I grew up politically, and the centre-left was split between Labour and the SDP Liberal alliance, and that enabled the Tories to get big majorities on a minority of the vote. If we recover, I think there is the potential with this split on the right for that to happen to the benefit of the Labour Party. And there is, and you know, you listen to the language, Jackie, your language, the language of reform, you're at each other like cats and dogs.
What have I said about reform?
And you know, I think. Well, I mean, come on. What about your chief?
She has
whip?
not been rude.
No, okay. What about your chief whip? What she said about Robert Jenrick?
Well, I'm not
it's
talking
visceral.
About, no, you just said me. What I have said is I was in Brussels for 20 years.
Yeah.
And 15 of those as an MEP and 5 with the aerospace, space and defence industries. And so, of course, I know Nigel very well. And I used to say to him quite frequently when we were all having a crack at the EU structures and all of those things, get your tanks off our lawn. I mean, 1988 Bruges speech, when Margaret Thatcher stood up and we had the discussions then about a possible single currency, I actually opposed that. I mean, I'd lived in 4 countries in Europe. I wasn't anti-Europe, but I was certainly, even at that time, very concerned about the way forward and the way the structures were working actually in the European community as it was then. Anyway, I went in, I did a job. Nigel Farage is an excellent communicator, and he certainly filled a void. I think he's one of the most influential politicians in terms of communication in the last 20, 25 years. But we still have a job to do. I think Nigel's very good at headlines. I think the headlines are fantastic. I don't think they have any strength in terms of the economy, I have to say. So my criticism
I think that's possibly a fair criticism in the past, but Danny Kruger's written a piece in The Spectator this afternoon, which I understand is doing the rounds on the Tory WhatsApp groups, basically setting out how much work Reform are putting into preparing for government, the kind of bills that they're going to produce, the kind of work plans for civil service. They are doing the work behind the scenes now, and it's the Tories are the ones who have to convince people that they can do it better the second time.
They're going to have to overturn Bill's majority.
Reform have got to answer some serious questions. You know, Nigel Farage has tried to project that, you know, they're reaching out to Labour voters. Of the 8 Reform MPs, 5 of them are previously Conservative MPs and the other 3 are previous Conservative voters and activists. This is increasingly looking like the Tory party, the Tory party 2.0, and I think that presents a problem for reform. But, Jackie, the degree of aggression and enmity in the debate between Reform and the Tories at the moment is incredibly divisive, and I think damages both parties, and I think as we move towards the general election, that's going to become more serious for both of them.
I don't think the enmity... No, if I may say, I don't think the enmity is particularly coming from our side. There's a great deal coming from Nigel, I have to say.
Oh, come on. Some of the briefings that Tories have been putting out about Robert and Suella. I mean, for example, the claim that Suella had mental health problems. Again, I know that wasn't signed off by Kemi Badenoch. Nobody's blaming it, but the enmity is definitely going both ways.
And what about the email exchange with your chief whip, with Robert Jenrick?
Well, look, chief whips and they can have... Well, I'm not interested in their email, what they said on an email. I am saying as a part of this party, I certainly don't condone anything that's... you know, that's come out, this draft or other that was sent out, which was not authorised by the party and was retracted immediately, quite rightly, because we don't condone anything like that at all. What I am saying is, I mean, Nigel turned round all those years ago, and I think that he made a mistake, and he said, I'm going to make sure, and he said it now, I'm going to make sure I destroy the Tory party.
Well, the problem is, though, that in our political system, in proportional representation jurisdictions, like some in Europe, there is room for more than one party on the left and more than one party on the right, and you can have an election, then do a deal and have a coalition. But in our system, there's only room for one.
And it was one big coalition. I know.
Only after the election,
yeah,
sadly.
but you then look at where Germany ended up with the coalition government, never allowed themselves to build nuclear because the Greens had such a
Although we are going to have to end this segment there, but lots more to say on this topic, I'm sure. But don't go away, because coming up, a rates discount and freeze for pubs, but publicans say it's too little, too late. Can Britain's locals still be saved? Stick with us.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
It's been very unsettled across southern Europe so far this week, and there is more heavy, thundery rain to come, even some significant hill snow through the next few days. Tomorrow is going to be very wet across much of Spain, Portugal and also North Morocco. Several hundred millimetres of rain building up through this week, and it's also very unsettled further east across the Mediterranean. Strong winds leading to large waves and also some heavy, thundery rain. More changeable weather to come into the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Good evening. I'm back with your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Now, there's going to be some persistent rain pushing into the southwest again later tomorrow. But before all that, there's some mist, some fog, some murkiness to watch out for tonight. That's because there's a bit of a slack flow across the country. That slack flow leading to light winds, allowing for cloud to develop and then lower, bringing some mist, some fog and some murkiness for many places, particularly through the early hours of tomorrow morning. Towards the far northeast of the country, eastern Scotland in particular, quite wet here, some persistent rain, even some hill snow and showery outbreaks of rain towards the southwest. Temperatures for many won't be quite as low as they were last night, but nonetheless it could be a bit chilly, a touch of frost in some rural spots where we get any clear skies. Starting off tomorrow morning on a pretty damp note across much of northern and eastern Scotland. The rain's going to be a bit persistent at times, but not especially heavy, but we could see some further snow building up over the hills and mountains. Drier and brighter across western and southern parts of Scotland and towards the northeast of Northern Ireland, but some rain coming in from the south. And whilst across much of England and Wales it's going to be a largely dry start, it could also be quite cloudy, quite murky because of that mist and fog that's developing overnight. Then, as we go through the day, not a huge amount changes for many. Lots of places staying largely dry, but quite cloudy and murky. Further rain towards the far northeast of the UK. But it's in the southwest where we have rain pushing its way in, and this could be quite persistent, could be quite heavy, could cause some further flooding issues. Temperatures, well, similar to today, really, around average for the time of year. More wet weather to come as we go through Friday. That band of rain pushes its way northeastwards. Likely to see some impacts from the wet weather across Northern Ireland, with some further flooding here and elsewhere. As that rain pushes its way further northwards, we could see some further hill snow as there's colder air across northern parts in particular. More changeable weather to come as we go through this weekend, with some dry but bright weather at times, also a bit of rain.
Thank you, Britain, for the thousands of you who are becoming friends of GB News every week.
You're not only watching and listening to our programmes, you're becoming part of them too.
Good evening, this is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. On the A74M northbound, there are traffic restrictions between junction 16 and junction 15 due to a crash. The A55 eastbound is completely closed from junction 33B at Eulo to junction 34 on the Eulo loop following an accident. In Newcastle, a broken down vehicle is obstructing one of the two lanes on the A1 southbound slip from the A1056. Additionally, Avanti West Coast is experiencing major train disruptions between Crewe and Wigan North Western and Runcorn, while TransPennine Express services are disrupted between Huddersfield and Manchester Victoria. For more detailed travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Miriam Cates, keeping me company until 7. I've got the Conservative peer and former MEP, Baroness Jackie Foster, and former Labour Minister Bill Rammell. Well, a story about pubs. Pubs are constantly in the news, they're struggling, and the government has U-turned again, announcing that it will be giving pubs and music venues a 15% discount on their business rates bills from April. But hospitality has still been left in the cold, as other businesses like hotels and restaurants and cafes have been excluded from the extra support handed to pubs. Well, the Chancellor has said that pubs are different and a huge community asset.
We've committed to publish a high street strategy and to look at the methodology for hotels as well. So we do understand some of those specific concerns. Pubs are different. They are a huge community asset. 7,000 pubs closed under the last Conservative government, and we've got to do more to protect our pubs.
But ignoring other hospitality businesses could be a major mistake for the government, because a new study has found that Labour could be wiped out in the next election unless the government increases support to Britain's high streets, as improving shopping areas was the third most important local issue for voters. Bill, there's a strong relationship, isn't there, between a kind of thriving high street, thriving pubs and people's sense of community. Do you think what the Chancellor has offered to pubs is going to be enough to keep them open?
It's going to go some way. Let's look at what originally happened. The government was rightly withdrawing the COVID relief support. You can't, 4 years after COVID, you can't keep giving businesses support on the back of COVID. But there was a business rate revaluation at the same time. Now, unbelievably, that was not intended and didn't raise money for the government. It was about redistribution, and there are winners and losers. And the problem is the winners keep quiet whilst the losers scream blue murder. And the government, I think, has communicated that very badly. It's, however, listened. And I think it's welcome. You know, the 15% reduction, effectively a 3-year freeze until the next revaluation, and looking at the methodology is the right approach. They've done it before April when the changes were going to kick in. But on the broader point, so I think it is a good decision, but on the broader point about, trends on the high street, and I think there are real concerns about what's happening on the high street, but you can't push water uphill economically. You can't, Margaret Thatcher used to say you shouldn't subsidise non-viable businesses. And there are some trends here that are nothing to do with government, are actually about all of us and the way that we behave. A quarter of people are not drinking. And, you know, that's particularly so amongst younger people who historically predominantly have flooded the pubs. You know, in terms of the high street, online shopping, and we're all guilty of online shopping, and that's, you know, creating pressure. Working from home is creating pressure on the high street. And the idea that the government, the taxpayer, steps in to prop up every business that is challenged, I just think is for the birds.
Well, how Thatcherite of you, Bill, because, of course, the French take a very different approach. They do subsidise their high street, they ban out-of-town shopping, they have restrictions on Sunday trading, they keep their... In fact, they don't do business rates, they do turnover taxes, which is obviously a lot fairer. And guess what? Their high streets are thriving, their independent shops are thriving, their bakeries are still open. Perhaps we should have taken a far less Thatcherite approach to this.
Well, I don't think it's about a Thatcherite approach at all. I think where Bill's absolutely right, and there has been a recognition. We buy online, you know, we're helping China, aren't we? We buy online, we do all of these sorts of things. I know it's like an oxymoron, really, isn't it? And but at the end of the day, what you have to be able to understand is how the supply chain of the hospitality industry works. This isn't just about the pub. I mean, I worked in the hospitality industry, from an airline, if you were looking at tourism, for example, to hotels, to restaurants, to cafes. I mean, this goes right down to the taxi driver that picks you up. So this isn't in isolation when they introduce something and they're taxing people. You know, Bill said, oh, well, you know, just for the next couple of years. This is massive already. I mean, these small businesses have already been hit with increases in national insurance. They increased the minimum wage. It's not so much that you don't want somebody to have a decent wage, but there was no notification, and that's happened twice in 2 budgets. So they're reeling. I mean, this, you know, 3.5 million people are employed in the hospitality industry across the United Kingdom. This is absolutely massive. And there is such little thought, and I think it is, genuinely, because nobody in the Cabinet has ever run a business. It doesn't mean to say they aren't reasonably decent folk. They just do not get it. It's a bit like the farmers and the rural, the whole rural community, and the importance, actually, to hospitality because they're supplying, providing food and all of these sorts of things. And I just think they are literally kidding themselves if they think that they can sort of bail out the pubs, you know, 50 for whatever, for a short time, and then everything's going to be all right in 2 years' time, because, Miriam, it's not.
Part of the problem here is the way that business rates are calculated differently for pubs, whereas for supermarkets, for example, or other businesses, it's done more on the rateable value, on the size of the shop. But for pubs, it's done more on turnover, and obviously alcohol is very high value, and so they pay far more than equivalent businesses.
Well, and that's part of the government's announcement, that they're actually going to look at the methodology before the next business rate revaluation in 3 years' time. And they've given the 15% discount and freezing the rates for 3 years to see pubs through to that end. But your point, Miriam, about, you know, it's so much better in France. I was in Boulogne just before Christmas, and the high street was shocking. Much dowdier than most towns that I experience in the UK. So, you know, I think this is complicated. It's challenging, and yes, you know, the government needs to do what it can to support, and this announcement is part of that. And the Pride in Place £5 billion funds to try and reinvigorate the high street is important. But, you know, I'm not a Thatcherite, but I think she got some things right. And the idea that any government of any party, the idea that it can subsidise non-viable businesses, I just don't think it's sustainable.
But what if it's a government policy that is making the businesses non-viable, which is certainly the case for pubs? Well, alcohol tax.
This policy will make them less and less viable.
Yeah.
And you've also got to look at the responsibility of councils who've been responsible for their high streets. I mean, I raised an issue the other week, and it's about charity shops. Now, they have 80% discount, and some have up to 100% discount on the high street. And some of these charities are multi-million-pound businesses. Now, your local hairdresser, who's next door, with a bit of luck, and somebody else on the corner, they're not getting anything like this. And I think it sends out the wrong message. I have no issue about a charity shop or on the high street. That's not a problem at all. But they should be paying the same amount of business. I mean, I don't like business rates at all. I'd abolish them if I could.
Well, maybe that
where's the magic money tree to make that happen?
We should go for a turnover tax so that it's at least related to how much money you make rather than how much floor space you've got. Anyway, I have to leave it there. Coming up after the break, Trump warns Iran that time is running out for a nuclear deal as the US president sends a massive armada, in his words, to the Gulf. Stick with us.
I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co. with you.
Hello, everyone. Patrick Christie is here. GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Dewbs & Co. with me, Miriam Cates, keeping me company until 7 o'clock. I've got Baroness Jackie Foster and Bill Rammell. Now, President Donald Trump has said that a massive armada of US warships is moving quickly towards Iran. The US president has threatened to bombard the regime if it doesn't agree to a new deal to ban nuclear weapons. And now the Iranian government have said that they are ready to defend themselves if they are pushed. Panel, this has been a long time coming. We've seen this military build-up over the past few weeks. Also, UK assets moving around, Israeli assets moving around. Jackie, do you think Trump is serious about this threat, or is this a negotiating tactic to try to get them to give up some of their potential nuclear capabilities?
Well, obviously, I can't read his mind, but where I do admire... Who can? Who can? He normally throws the grenade in and then sees where everything sort of, you know... But that's obviously on a figurative sense.
Yes.
But with regards to this... the media, predominantly mainstream media, and others, and many politicians and groups who like to protest, have basically been, I think, deaf, or they just don't want to see what has been happening in the Islamic Republic of Iran since before New Year, when people went out on the streets. This is one of the Ayatollah and the Islamic Republican Guard Corps, they're his supreme guys that support him, their armed forces, are one of the most cruelest, despotic, barbaric groups of people, I think, on this planet. This Islamic Republic, here's the spider. They are the spider, and that web goes right across the Middle East. So when you look at the issues with Israel, the attacks on Israel, when you look at all of the issues that are happening across the Middle East and even further, behind it so often is the Islamic Republic and this regime. In the last, since the people, unarmed civilians, there's at least 35,000 unarmed civilians, a lot of young people who've been out on the streets and murdered. There's tens of thousands who've been injured. They are even going and dragging people's bodies out of the hospital and making families pay to get the body back. I mean, they are just horrendous.
Bill.
And Donald Trump is the only one that's actually stood up. I mean, what they can actually do is another issue.
Well, that is the other issue, because, Bill, I don't think anyone would disagree with Jackie that it's a horrendous regime. They execute hundreds of people every year. But it's a different question whether it is wise for the US or anyone else to intervene militarily.
I think that's true. But, I mean, firstly, I do agree with Jackie. It's an abhorrent regime. I mean, the reports are that there's confirmed 6,300 people dead. A further 17,000 have probably been killed as well. They massively repress their own people and murder them, and they destabilise the region as well. I lived and worked in Iraqi Kurdistan and saw it firsthand.
Bomb them?
Well, that's the problem. To what purpose? To what effect? And what are the consequences going to be? I was reading a piece today. There's often been speculated that the Iranians might shut off the Straits of Hormuz.
Yep.
If they did that, massive economic consequences. And the analysts said, of course, the Iranians, the judgment is, would not do that because it's their interests and China's interests unless the regime was at risk. And by the looks of it, the regime is at risk. And so, what clear-eyed purpose has Trump got?
Yeah.
And this is the guy who was America first, an end to forever wars, and virtually everywhere in the world he's wanting to intervene now. And I don't see a clear strategy if he intervenes, what he would do, how he would do it, and what the end game is. And if you don't know that, you really shouldn't be pushing to intervene.
And perhaps the lessons of earlier interventions in the Middle East, which have destabilised the regions even to this day, is that however appalling the regime, perhaps it's better not to get...
I mean, look, I was part of the government that took the decision to go into...
I'm very sorry, but if we take...
Hold on.
Hang on, we've got about 20 seconds, so...
If we carry on kowtowing to these despots, we will never solve some of these issues.
Yeah, but the big lesson from Iraq is George W. Bush...
Hold on. Have to leave it there.
There was no post-conflict plan. And that's the risk here as well.
The question is, what is our responsibility and what is not our responsibility? I hope that question is going through Donald Trump's head. We'll find out very soon. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks to my panel tonight. Thanks for all your views sending in from home. I'll be back tomorrow morning at 9:30 for Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce. But I hope you have a fantastic evening, and we've got your weather next.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good evening. I'm back with your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Now, there's going to be some persistent rain pushing into the southwest again later tomorrow. But before all that, there's some mist, some fog, some murkiness to watch out for tonight. That's because there's a bit of a slack flow across the country. That slack flow leading to light winds, allowing for cloud to develop and then lower, bringing some mist, some fog and some murkiness for many places, particularly through the early hours of tomorrow morning. Towards the far northeast of the country, eastern Scotland in particular, quite wet here, some persistent rain, even some hill snow and showery outbreaks of rain towards the southwest. Temperatures for many won't be quite as low as they were last night, but nonetheless it could be a bit chilly, a touch of frost in some rural spots where we get any clear skies. Starting off tomorrow morning on a pretty damp note across much of northern and eastern Scotland. The rain's going to be a bit persistent at times, but not especially heavy, but we could see some further snow building up over the hills and mountains. Drier and brighter across western and southern parts of Scotland and towards the northeast of Northern Ireland, but some rain coming in from the south. And whilst across much of England and Wales it's going to be a largely dry start, it could also be quite cloudy, quite murky because of that mist and fog that's developing overnight. Then as we go through the day, not a huge amount changes for many. Lots of places staying largely dry but quite cloudy and murky. Further rain towards the far northeast of the UK. But it's in the southwest where we have rain pushing its way in, and this could be quite persistent, could be quite heavy, could cause some further flooding issues. Temperatures, well, similar to today really, around average for the time of year. More wet weather to come as we go through Friday. That band of rain pushes its way northeastwards. Likely to see some impacts from the wet weather across Northern Ireland with some further flooding here and elsewhere. As that rain pushes its way further northwards, we could see some further hill snow as there's colder air across northern parts in particular. More changeable weather to come as we go through this weekend with some dry but bright weather at times, also a bit of rain.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption.